Greetings, everyone. Happy Saturday. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility, along with Stephen Reid from Scotland. Welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility, the show where we talk about some of the cool new releases that are coming out in the worlds of heavy metal, progressive rock, jazz fusion, hard rock, classic rock, whatever the hell we can squeeze into what we do here. We try to do it. So normally when I get together with Stephen or various other Sea of Tranquility scribes, we try to squeeze in a bunch of them, right? Instead of just doing one CD or two. Today, we're going to try and tackle 4 each. So we're going to give you a little brief synopsis of these albums here that we're talking about. So I've got my 4. Steven's got his 4. I'm going to have him kick us off with his first choice of the day.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with, since I've been involved with the YouTube show, it's a band that has probably been mentioned to me more than any other. And I know it's a band that I don't know if you're not keen on them or if you just don't know them so well, but Thunder keep coming up in the comments. People have emailed me, they've mentioned it at various times. I've got all the catalogue. It is a band that I really like. I saw them on one of their first ever tours. They actually played in Perth. Nobody plays in Perth. So this is the band's latest album. This is All the Right Noises, and it definitely is all the right noises. This is a great album.
So I will answer your question right now. Yes, that band is probably, well, I don't know if it's the number one, but it's definitely a top 3 band that people have asked me over the years. Like, Pete, you love all these like UK bands and you've never ever talked about Thunder, and you love Deep Purple, and I never understand why you don't like Thunder. Quite frankly, until people started bringing them up to me, I'd never heard of Thunder before, ever.
Yeah.
So honestly, I don't think I've ever listened to a lick of their music ever. But they come so highly recommended.
Yes, they are good, honest British hard rock. It's bluesy, but it's not the blues. It's heavy, but it's not hard rock. It's just good, honest rock and roll music. There's a bit of free in there. Danny Bose, or Daniel Bose, excuse the sun today, everybody. There's sun in Scotland. There you go. I'll make the most of it, get myself a tan. Daniel Bose, as he's credited in the latest album, is one of the kind of underrated singers, I would say, of the genre. The guy has just got such a natural ease about his delivery. There's no he doesn't need to force anything. His pronunciation and his diction are fantastic. He's just a really an underrated talent, that has to be said. As is Luke Morley, who's the guitarist who writes everything, nearly everything. Not 100% sure. He's probably written, I would guess, every song the band's ever played. Was allegedly kind of lined up for Whitesnake at one point. It never kind of happened. Thunder fans are pleased by that because it meant that Thunder, who've been a little start-stop over the years, continued on. And they've never really, in my opinion, don't know how many albums we're at, 13, something like that. They've never released a clunker. Some are better than others because that's just the way that it goes. I would say this is one of the best for at least the last couple of decades. I've got the nice 2-disc version. I don't know how much of that you can actually see today. That maybe help a little bit. Which has got a bonus disc with some live recordings, which feature some of the other album tracks kind of rearranged and mucked about with and played live in the studio, which is interesting if you like that sort of stuff, which I do. Some songs that are not anywhere else as well are also on there. But it's just, I love the album cover. This is the singing, ringing tree. That's a musical sculpture that's in Lancashire in England, which, if we're ever allowed to travel ever again, I'd quite like to go and see. The silly bit of art in there, if you can see that. I don't know if that's coming across at all.
Yeah.
Kind of sums up the band's humour. So this is Harry James, who you'll know from playing in Magnum. This is a drummer. He's always the figure of fun. And this is the rest of the band making him the figure of fun. And he plays that part very well, I have to say. Also an excellent drummer. And it's just a great rock album. It kicks off with Last One Out, Turn Out the Lights, a little bit of politics on this album as well. It's very much a comment on the current UK. Let's not get too deep into that. People will either agree or not. But it's a great song. It's got one of those little hooks that it just gets in your mind. And just, I don't know, it's just a great song that I just love to bits. But the whole thing, top to bottom, The Smoking Gun is a slower track, a bit like Low Life in High Places for anyone who has followed Thunder over the years. That was on the second album. kind of more heartfelt ballad. Going to Sin City, She's a Millionaire, everything. It's really highly recommended. It's going to feature very highly at my end of year list unless something drastic changes. I love it, I have to say. I've always loved Thunder. This is up there with the best of them. So if you've liked the band, I would definitely say you should be going out and getting this. And I would go out and get the 2-disc version if you can, because it's very, very much worth it for what's on disc 2 as well.
So for someone like me who has never listened to them, I don't have anything by them, would that be a good starting point?
Yes, that would be a good starting point. I don't think you can go wrong. The debut is over here in the UK in this scene, I would say, is a bit of a legendary album. So that is Backstreet Symphony. That's a cracking album. So I would, yeah, bookend it. I would buy the first, I would buy the latest. And then if you like those two, then let's just go ahead and meet in the middle. Who they've been remarkably consistent, but those are arguably two of the standouts, I would say. So yeah, I think we're talking up there with some of the best things I've ever done.
Wow. All right. I might do that. I love the band name. I think it's terrific. I mean, Thunder. I mean, come on. Can't go wrong there. Now, do you have the whole catalog?
I do, yes.
All right. So for everybody watching, let's see it in the comments below. Would you like to see Steven do a ranking of the Thunder albums? I'm happy to host that and have him do it. So if you want it, I mean, we're doing that right after this show with Magenta. So I'm more than happy because I know we had a lot of Thunder fans who watched this channel.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it. Yeah.
There you go. There you have it. Cool. All right. Well, put in the books. That's going to be on the show to-do list. So coming at you probably sometime next month. So stay tuned for that. May is right around the corner. All right. So my first choice of today, and Rick, if you're watching, I told you I'd get to it eventually. The Rick Ray Band's Acrylic Charlie. So some of you may be like, who is the Rick Ray Band? So here in the States, Rick is a fantastic guitar player and singer and songwriter who has been really active on the scene. I believe Rick is from the upper Midwest, if I remember correctly. And he's had the Rick Ray Band going on for many, many years. They've released like 35 albums. And it's since like the early 90s. I know, ridiculously a number of albums. He has toured and opened up with the likes of Frank Marino and Robin Trower. Those are his two heroes. He is a serious, serious guitar player who loves progressive rock and psychedelic music and jazz fusion. And in his band right now is Rick on guitars and vocals, Dave Shaggy Snodgrass on bass and vocals, Kip Volans on drums, Rick Sarge Schultz on reeds and wind synth, and then special guest Sam Guinta playing keyboards on one of the songs. So there's the guys in the band right there. It's hard to see. And Rick does all the cover art for these albums. This is very like kind of DIY type stuff. This is all self-released, self-produced. Rick does all the artwork. All the albums have this really kind of like very cartoony like artwork to it. Steven, I'm sure, has reviewed some Rick Ray stuff in the past, right, for us?
Yep.
Yeah. I think everybody on Sea of Tranquility has reviewed at least 5 Rick Ray albums in their lifetime. This is a really good album. I generally always really like the Rick Ray Band albums. They're it's always very kind of like homegrown production, right? You're not going to expect these big budgeted type things here, but it's always very honest music that is kind of hard rock, kind of bluesy. There's always elements of jazz, psychedelia, and prog, and you get that here. But there's some really epic long tracks on here that have some really good guitar solos, some cool riffs, good vocals. They're really unique sounding because you've got this kind of like hard rock, bluesy hard rock music. And then you got like the saxophone and the flutes kind of like coming in and like it almost like it doesn't go there, but it does. All Debts Are Paid is a really good hard rock song. The title track is really good. Time Waits for You is a really neat song. I think it's like 11 minutes long. It's got this spiraling like psychedelic guitar solo, really, really good. You got Flight 714, Doomtown Mannequins, just a really good rockin' record. Like I said, has enough little elements of all those other genres that I spoke about to make it really, really interesting. And I got to say, some people have, when they talked about this band in the past, have said, it's just that it's so lo-fi produced. But I don't mind that much. And I think this album to me sounds a little brighter, which I kind of like. But I always give them props because nobody sounds like these guys. They have such a unique sound. and he's just such a tremendous guitar player. I mean, really, really good player. So I would investigate these guys if you haven't. The Rick Ray Band, Acrylic Charlie, for everybody watching. Rick's got, like, I think, a Bandcamp page, and you can go get any of his old releases. They're all really strong, but this one is quite enjoyable. I've listened to this quite a lot lately, and really, really good. Acrylic Charlie from the Rick Ray Band. That's my first selection.
Yeah, very much from the heart sort of stuff, Rick Ray.
Yeah.
It's I do like the sort of. There's a lot to be said for these more lo-fi. Makes it sound like it's, I don't know, cheap and nasty, and I don't mean it like that. But there's a lot to be said for these sort of self-produced bands and artists out there that just have a passion for it, and that's what comes across, I think, with it. I've not heard a lot of Rick Ray, but I've heard enough to know that he means it. You know.
Yeah, and he sticks to his guns about the kind of music he wants to do, and they do a lot of these albums, and they're just all really good. I remember, and it seems like yesterday, but it's a million years ago. Back like in the really early 2000s, I got an email from Rick out of the blue. He goes, "Oh, I've been following your website," because this is in the early days. And he goes, "My name is Rick Ray, and we've produced a whole bunch of albums in the 90s, and I got a brand new one. Can I send you, some of our catalog to review on the website?" I was like, "Sure." The next thing I know, like a week later, this box comes in with like 13, 15 albums. And I'm like, holy moly. It's like, I didn't expect that. But then I'm listening to it, I'm like, wow, this is all really good stuff. And I'm like, I've never heard anything like this before. I really like the blending of like the jazz influence with with the psych and the hard rock and all those stuff together makes it kind of progressive. And it's like, and some of the songs are really catchy, and and some are a little more complex. It's really, really interesting stuff. And thankfully they keep going and keep going and keep going. So that's a really good one.
So for me, next, I have got, well, a band that I've been on the go since 1978, but I've, to my knowledge, only just heard them in the past couple of weeks. So this is the new album from Cast. Okay. There you go. Nice album cover, as to be said.
Yeah.
What we've seen here, is this Vigesimus or Vigesimus? I don't know.
Yeah, Jesus.
It's one of the other, or somebody can explain to me down below how I should actually be saying that. So this is Mexican progressive rock, which, as I say, is new to me, and I must admit that I've enjoyed this so much. I went and read a couple of your reviews of their recent albums. It's made me realise that I need to go and find out more about Cast.
Well, you know what? Kind of like the Rick Ray Band, Cast have like 1 million albums in the last 30
this
years.
This is their 20th, I think, 20th studio album. Yeah. And I believe, as I say, this is the first time I've heard them. So reading up a little bit about them, which is not very easy because there's not much about their past and their history there, but they seem to have evolved through a whole host of different progressive and fusion styles to land somewhere for me that is kind of like neo-prog, I think, really. It's the band that not all the way through, and they're definitely not copying anybody. I mean, one of the main instruments in this is violin. So where you'd expect an awful lot of synths and guitars to kind of take center stage, you've actually got Robert Izzo on violin. And often you would think to yourself, well, that's a bit of a gimmick. Do you know, that it's just because let's try and do something different. But wow, it belongs. In a way that when I kind of read things before I listened to it and kind of, okay, this could be interesting, could be difficult to kind of get to know. And it really isn't. And in ways, the violin is in your face. And in other ways, it's just naturally sitting there because it just is written in as it's meant to be. And I was really impressed with it. So as I say, been on the go since 1978. Alfonso Vidales is the main guy. Yeah. Two singers, Bobby Vidales and Lupita Acuna, excuse the pronunciations here. And as I say, Arena was the band that kind of came to mind on occasions for me, more in that kind of grandiose kind of way where Arena, around the Contagium era that I have raved about on numerous shows that we've done, they could build songs from very small into something really large without sounding contrived. And I found that this album did the same. As I say, Vigesimus is the name of the album. And it's one of those ones that's really, caught me unawares. It came through, gratefully received, gave it a listen, and was hooked immediately. And the more I listen, the more I like, I have to say. So we've got Dredging Through the Higher Plane is the closing song on it. The vocal arrangements on that are fantastic. The two singers really blend very well indeed. If you want to kind of get a handle on what the violin does in the band, the unknown wise advice to me is there's some really out there violin playing, but at the same time, there's also some kind of more background stuff as well that gives you a good idea of how it fits and how it works, and Location and Destination, which is just a really strong song. So for anyone who likes a little bit of neo-prog, and from the comments that we get, a lot of people do, Cast are, well, to me anyway, I'm sure other people will say that they followed them all the way through from 78 to now, were an unknown quantity to me, well worth seeking out. And this has been really, in recent times, last couple of months, one of my pleasant surprises. Never knew they existed. Read your reviews after hearing this and thought, okay, might not go and get all 20, because goodness knows how hard that's going to be to find.
I don't even have all 20, but I have a good chunk of them. But yeah, that's yeah.
And so, it's highly recommended.
Yeah, it's really good. I've probably only listened to it twice, and I really like what I've heard. But what's kind of cool about that band is that they have had they've had a lot of lineup changes, obviously, as you can imagine, over the years, and their sound has kind of changed periodically. So early in the beginning, their first few albums are very neo-prog, kind of like IQ, early Marillion, Genesis type of thing. Very, very keyboard dominated with some nice guitar work. And the violin player, to my knowledge, only just joined the band like maybe within the last 8 to 10 years. So they never had that violin presence in the early part of the music. And I agree with you. The guitar work has taken on a heavier tone on the more recent albums. That's why I think I like your Arena comparison, because the last couple albums have been a bit heavier than the earlier stuff. But they have some really great album covers early on. A lot of their like 90s albums are really good, like Angels and Demons, and I'm trying to think. There's an album, I can't think of the name of it, where it's got this weird kind of like Lord of the Rings looking creature character on the front. Really good stuff. If you love that, like kind of like I said, IQ, like 80s, early 90s IQ, it's just really good, honest progressive rock done by, and the guys in the band are really, I interviewed, I believe, the keyboard player, God, eons ago. Honestly, I don't even remember if it was for the Sea of Tranquility magazine. It might have been, or early on the website. I don't remember, one or the other. We did an email interview. Really nice guy. But yeah, that's a really good band with a lot of albums.
Yeah, I can sense it's going to be an expensive journey to find out more about them.
Yeah, but if you want a recommendation of like which ones to start with, I can easily give you like a good 5, because there are some that are just way better than some of the others, that for me anyway. So, but Angels and Demons, if you can find it, that's a really
that's where to go.
Yeah, really good.
That's what we'll do. That's where I'm going next time.
Cool. All right, so my second choice here for today is the first album from this French band in many, many years. This is one of those bands that I had always heard about, but never listened to. They're always talked very highly of. They released their debut album, I think, in 79. Then they came out with the second album in 1980. And then I guess broke up and just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. But lo and behold, Asia Minor is back with a brand new album, which is called Points of Libration. Points of Libration.
Libration
is on, God, what label is this on? I run into this all the time, where like the writing on the back of these CDs is like microscopic. Marquee in Japan and AMS in Europe. Okay, so that's what we got. So this came out very early in most of the world in early 2021. It came out in Japan in very late 2020 here. So this is, and Anthony, thank you so much for sending this to me. This is a really interesting band. Their flute is very prevalent in their music. There's some really lovely guitar work, plenty of keyboards. There are vocals. There's a lot of instrumental stuff going on here as well. If you can imagine, every time I listen to this CD, all I can think of is classic Camel meets Jethro Tull. The more kind of, and Jethro Tull, the less heavy Jethro Tull, more like kind of like Songs from the Wood, Heavy Horses, that period, the more folky Jethro Tull. Lovely, lovely melodies. The flute is just magnificent on here, and there's really nice keyboard textures. The guitars, all the instruments kind of like drift in and drift out of the arrangements. The vocal melodies are really nice. None of the songs are overly long. You've got a 9-minute track, a couple 7-minute tracks. The rest fall in like 3 to 5 minutes. Deadline of a Lifetime is a killer song. Oriental Game is that big epic 9-minute track, which I spoke about. You got Urban Silk is really, really nice. Just a really cool modern progressive rock album from a band that's been around for a long time, but we kind of like just kind of disappeared from the scene. And again, I haven't heard those first two albums, so I can't really compare this to their classic stuff. But I will say, if I played this and I had no idea that this was a brand new release from like an older band, I would say, oh, cool, that sounds like something pretty neat from the late 70s, early 80s. It has that feel. It does not sound like a band trying to modernize their sound. It sounds like a classic progressive rock album. So really nice. So Asia Minor, Points of Libration, quite good. And, it's got this kind of like little mini LP type of.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. And the inside here, you've got you got the booklet, which is kind of neat. And let's see if we got anything really interesting other than lyrics in here. Let's see if there's a picture. I don't remember if there's a picture of the band. I don't believe so. No, but it's got some neat artwork and stuff. And then you've got the LP. The CD comes in this like little sleeve thing here. So pretty nice little package. It's a really good listen. It's one of those albums, that prog albums, where you get done listening to it and you're like, yeah, that's pretty charming. It's got this majestic charm to it that I think is very endearing. And me being a Camel fan and a Jethro Tull fan, it's got everything that clicks all those buttons. So Asia Minor, check it out. If you're someone who listened to them back in the day and kind of forgot about them, well, they're back with a new album. Go check it out.
Well, it's interesting that you've mentioned Jethro Tull quite a lot there, because next up for me is, well, Jethro Tull, a bit of Tull. My lighting's not great today. This is or as this is now called, a la mode. So this is the all singing, all dancing, all disking. We've got 3 CDs, we've got 3 DVDs. Are we getting to a definitive stage with these reissues, Peter? We discussed just before we came on air that we both have far too many versions of an awful lot of these albums, and we can't help ourselves. But when they're offering up as much as these are, I mean, not just 6 discs with live content, bonus tracks, but what's in all of this is just, I mean, you've got proper essays on the band at the time, some great live shots. To upset some people, there's a picture of Stephen Wilson in here as well, as he describes how he remastered the whole thing, including the double disc live show from the tour. It covers all the bases. There's some vintage interviews in it as well. It's really, I mean, this is a labour of love, I would say. It's similar for anyone who has invested in, I mean, there's lots of these out already from the catalogue, and they've done the same for Marillion as well. So anyone that's had any of those will know the standard and the quality of what's on here. In terms of the album itself, I was shocked by how much I liked this, coming back to it after not listening to it for a long time. This is one I haven't bought over and over, to be fair, because I always kind of thought it was a cool album, but it wasn't really a Jethro Tull album in many ways. It was meant to be an Ian Anderson solo album, released in 1980, if memory serves correct. And at the record label's insistence, which was Chrysalis, it became a Tull album so that it would sell more realistically. So Martin Barr is the only other kind of long-term Jethro Tull member that was on this. You had Dave Pegg that had, I think, come in not long before on bass. You've got Mark Craney on drums, there's a nice vintage interview with him in here as well. There's so much content, I've not actually read everything in it, to be quite honest. And then you've got Eddie Jobson on keyboards, which was very left field at that stage. I mean, we know him from UK, Roxy Music, Curved Air even, and he's all over this. And it becomes, I've written quite a lengthy review, which will surprise nobody, on the website, kind of liken it to a lot of classic British English progressive rock bands kind of reinvented themselves at the start of the 80s, and Jethro Tull were definitely not immune to that. And this was the start of an evolution that arguably continued right the way on until now, I would suggest, because they never ever quite went back to where they come from, I don't think. And it was always Ian Anderson's band, but it became much more obviously Ian Anderson's band, I think, at this stage. And I really was quite blown away by how much I like things like Working John, Working Joe, Uniform especially, just has that kind of wild Ian Anderson-ness about it. And when you hear some of the live stuff, so disc 2 and disc 3, live at the LA Sports Arena in 1980, so you've got the whole live show that became part of the Slipstream VHS video that was released, which is an odd little curio of a thing. I'd never seen it before until I watched this. And it is like watching, I don't really know, it's like watching some bizarre Christmas special sort of music interlude that then is punctuated by some phenomenal live footage. Yeah. And there's a kind of narrative that means nothing at all to the whole thing. And the live show, they're all wearing these kind of ridiculous sort of kitsch jumpsuits. But I must admit, and I mean, I have seen him a lot over the years, but I forgot just how compelling Ian Anderson is on stage. He just becomes a different thing entirely. And it's like almost like he's possessed. Yeah. But then you see him in the video parts where, like, I suppose they are promotional videos that were never released as such, apart from on the VHS. And he's just a very good actor in actual fact. I mean, they're all over the top and they're all a bit ridiculous and they're very of their time. You wouldn't watch any of them now and go, wow, they're great, but they're great. You know? And I really have to say that I got much more pleasure out of this than I've ever had out of this album before. So I don't know if I've just got a little bit carried away with it all. Steven Wilson's mix, and some of them, everyone knows I'm a Wilson fan. I don't hide that, you know. Some of his mixes that he does are fantastic. Some less so, to be fair. I think some of his stuff with Marillion has been a little bit too meddling for my personal taste, but I think he hits the nail on the head here, and I really have been impressed with it. And I found myself playing it again and again and again. But the live stuff for me is where it's at here. The live show is outstanding. And you've got a variety of different audio options. You've got 5.1s, you've got Dolby AC 5.1, you've got, what else have you got? A transfer of the original LP master on here. So if you don't really like the remaster, you can listen to the old master. There's bonus tracks, there's Chorusk or Chorusk. It's a lock in Scotland. I should be able to say it, and I have no idea. Which is probably the only thing on it that I think is absolutely nowhere else. But yeah, love it. This has really hit me hard, I have to say. And it's quite nice when you get an album that you come with a bit of a preconceived idea. You think, I know everything that I need to know about this. You put it on and you go, oh, well, this is totally different. So yeah, it's been great fun getting to know an album that I thought I already knew.
Yep, exactly. So a couple things on that. So I'm gonna be doing a separate show on that box set with Anthony Ferraro. He's like the biggest Eddie Jobson fan on the planet, and I got to give him some time to talk about it as well. And that's one of his favorite albums. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. That is an excellent box set. And as Stephen and I talked about right before we went on air here, once you take that first step into these Jethro Tull box sets, there's no turning back at all. I mean, like, 50-page book, check. Live show that you never heard before, check. Steven Wilson remix, check. 5.1 surround sound, blah, blah, all this. I mean, it's like, what's not to love? Yeah. What's not to love? And it's like an absolute addiction. And I don't know if you had a chance to catch it, but Jack Toledano and I did a show specifically on the Jethro Tull box sets that have come out over the years, like maybe late last year. And there's just so much stuff. I don't think any band, at least bands that I like, have released so many cool box sets over the years where it's almost like everyone is essential. It's because Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson specifically have included more unreleased stuff that is absolutely worth your while to listen to. And it's mind-boggling when you think how many great songs have been left off of Jethro Tull albums that he kind of kept hidden, probably thinking, yeah, you know what? I'm going to make a lot of money releasing these someday, right? But, some of this stuff is like as good as the songs that are on the albums. Yeah. I don't, and I'll give you a recommendation right now. if you can get it at a good price, go out and get the Stormwatch box set that came out not that long ago. That has, I think, 3 songs that didn't make the Stormwatch album that have never been released before except on that box set, and they're amazing. And it's like, where have these been my whole life? You know, what are you doing holding on to all this stuff? Because there's no other bands, I don't think, that have that big of a treasure chest of rare and unreleased stuff in the vaults than Ian Anderson. I mean, the guy is a genius. The guy is a genius.
I'm not going to argue with that, to be fair. And the thing that struck me as well about the live album, which I really can't recommend highly enough. I mean, it's a 2-disc, all singing, all dancing.
Really good, yeah.
Sounds fantastic. But to me was always one of those albums that you can, it's not a Jethro Tull album. I mean, I know the name's on the front and I know it was never meant to be, but you listen to the live album, which has got, I think, 3 or 4 songs from A included in it, and they just roll along as if they're part of the show. You don't suddenly think, well, here's the new song. Not even with whatever we are, 40 years worth of hindsight, do you think, here's the new song? It just sounds like Jethro Tull. And you think, but the album, even now with all this bells and whistles and great sound, still doesn't really sound like Jethro Tull. But it still doesn't sound like anybody else.
Yeah, it's different, but it still works. And I mean, to your point, the first song they play on the live disc is Black Sunday. They started off with Black Sunday on that tour. And that, to me, is a fantastic song. And live, it takes on a whole new life, right? And it's like a Jethro.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The live 2 live discs, 4 live discs. So there's DVDs of it as well. Not the actual show, just the audio. Just to be clear, there's no full visual of the show, which I mentioned in my review. You think it has to be out there somewhere. I mean, we've got the audio for the whole thing, and we've got what is still good-looking footage on Slipstream. You think that show has to be there? Well, I tell you what, if there's a box coming soon or at any point down the line with that whole show that I can watch it, well, I'll be buying that one as well, because it's outstandingly good. Outstandingly good.
I think that's been the one want for a lot of fans on a lot of these box sets, is there hasn't been enough like video footage. There has been some, but for the most part, you get some cool audio, which is great. But I think there has always been a lack of really good footage from 70s era Jethro Tull and even early, you know, and once you get into the 80s, obviously stuff pops up everywhere. But yeah, that's always been kind of missing. Maybe someday. Hey, you know, we just got that cool new Genesis footage that just dropped recently from 73, right? Amazing. So it might be out there. You never know. All right. So next up for me, this is a lot of fun. You got any Todd Rundgren fans out there watching today? Well, if we do, a guy that I like quite a bit, become very friendly with him. He's an amazing musician, Fernando Perdomo-TRGRT, the music of Todd Rundgren. So of course, TRGTR stands for Todd Rundgren Guitar, right? So he was nice enough to sign this for me. To Pete, you rock. Fernando, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. So this is out on Cherry Red Records. This is basically, what do we got? 16 instrumental cover songs of Todd Rundgren classics, whether they be Todd Rundgren solo or Utopia songs. This is basically Fernando's kind of showing some love to the music of Todd Rundgren, and it is absolutely wild. It is so good. If you ever wanted to hear songs like Open My Eyes, International Feel, Can We Still Be Friends, Couldn't I Just Tell You, Bang the Drum All Day, Hello, It's Me, as instrumental guitar-driven songs, that's what you get here. It's so good. And Fernando is such a really, really good musician, and he plays almost everything on here. I mean, he does all the guitars and bass, everything. All instruments by Fernando Perdomo, except for Nick Bertling, who plays drums on Open My Eyes, Eddie Zine, drums on Kaleidoscope. Everything else is Fernando, and this album is in memory of Eddie Zine, Moogie Klingman, John Holbrook, and Doug Burris, all who had passed away recently. But just a loving tribute to someone who I consider a musical genius, Mr. Todd Rundgren. I'll read the whole track list. Open My Eyes, International Feel, Can We Still Be Friends, Kaleidoscope, Wailing Wall, Espionage, Couldn't I Just Tell You, I'm Looking at You, But I'm Talking to Myself, Lucky Guy, Smoke, Bang the Drum All Day, A Dream Goes On Forever, which is really, really good. Hello, It's Me, Can't Stop Running, Tiny Demons, and finishing it all off with The Seven Rays, which is pretty magical, a great Utopia track from the 70s. So yeah, this is just, I love this. I put, if you know these songs really well, like I do, hearing these fun, kind of jammy, up-tempo, guitar-driven interpretations of them is just, it's a lot of fun. This is probably one of the best kind of covers albums I've heard in ages. And this is what I'm talking about when you talk about covers albums. I want to hear something different. I want to hear the artist giving their own spin, their own interpretations, and not just doing note for note renditions of songs we know. So here he decided, we're not going to do any vocals on here. I'm just going to use the guitar as driving the whole song, doing the melodies, all that sort of thing. And it just works. It's so much fun. So Fernando Perdomo, TR Guitar, the music of Todd Rundgren. Highly, highly recommend this.
And it has to be said that Fernando Perdomo has been really prolific.
He has. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He's released an awful lot of great albums in the last maybe 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
A variety of styles. There was, I think, a 3-album suite, Out to Sea or something along those lines, which really hit the nail on the head. If you like a bit of, traditional symphonic prog, but he does different things, and you can pick up some of his albums and get something completely unexpected. I didn't know that was out. That's exciting, I have to say, because I know how good he is. So I can already imagine how good that's going to be, because he is capable of pulling influences from certain places but making them sound like him. Some people do covers or are influenced by things and they sound way too much like where it comes from.
Yeah.
But that's not what he's about. He's another underrated talent, I think, in recent times, and probably one of the most, upcoming, although he's been around for a long, long time in actual fact. One of the most upcoming in recent times. He just suddenly seems to have blossomed in a bit more of a presence. So more power to him for it, because hopefully there's lots more to come.
Yeah, he's worked with so many people. He's done the work with Dave Kersner, and he's done, he just did an album with Carmine Appice recently that he was telling me. And he is, and again, so many people that we talk to and that I work with on this channel, he's a complete music nerd. So he loves all sorts of different genres and what have you, even though a good chunk of what he does kind of falls into the progressive rock camp. But yeah, this is just so much fun. And he's a really, really tasty guitar player. Really, really good. And he plays from the heart. For those of you who watched the Sea of Tranquility Fall Fest back in November, I mean, we had one of his videos on there as well. And you could kind of see it there, like how much he's just into just creating music that comes from here, So
yeah,
good stuff from Fernando Perdomo. So, all right, back to you.
Well, my last one is, and well, actually, see, it's still sealed, but I have heard everything that's on it. So I got a nice print with it. So I don't know what's coming through today with this horrible sun that I've got in here. But this is, that's Bruce Soord is who that is. And this is the Soord Sessions. Does that help at all?
Yep, we got it. Yep.
So this is a 4 CD live rendition, or a solo live rendition, which were recorded throughout lockdown. So he did some live streaming shows and basically just themed them or took requests. And I think it was volume 4 that's already been released as part of a Record Store Day release on vinyl, which I got as well. And then we've got the All Singing, All Dancing 4 CD one, which I think there were 5 sessions in all, and there's a couple of bonus tracks from the 5th one. Not sure why number 5 didn't make it onto here. Maybe tells me inside here. I mean, we could open it while I'm on. There we go. We'll open it now.
Here we go. This is now the unboxing. Dun, 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 dun.
Now the unboxing, or the unwrapping.
The unwrapping, I guess. Yeah, it's more.
Yeah, there's no box here. I'm sad. I'm going to make sure that I don't bend the sticker, because I'm going to put the sticker on it. Because I'm going to put the sticker on it. I'm that guy. As you can tell from all my stuff, I mean, I unwrapped this one, the Thunder one, to make sure that the sticker was pristine to go back on the front, because somebody designed that and made it, and it's meant to be there. So anyway, way too much about my head there. So here we go. There's
yeah, that's nice looking. Yeah,
we've got on there. I really do like these releases that the Pineapple Thief and Stephen Wilson have done with these big book editions where you can see lots and lots of goodies here. That's some setup, I have to say. Lots and lots of guitars. What I liked about this is these are totally different from what the Pineapple Thief do, and it is billed as the Pineapple Thief. In truth, it's not really, because it's Bruce Soord.
Yeah.
Arguably, you could kind of say that is the Pineapple Thief. That's really unfair on the rest of the band, but he's the driving force and always has been. It started off as him, and then it's grown from there. But what I like about this is remarkably honest. It hasn't been touched up. It hasn't been kind of spliced and resequenced. It's very honest. You hear him chatting to the people who were watching, therefore talking to himself really in reality. And there's a couple of songs he has to restart because he doesn't quite get it right. There's one where he just can't quite get the loop to do what he wants to do, but you hear him talking about what he's doing as he's doing it. And it's a completely different thing. Lockdown has given us lots of opportunities to hear musicians being musicians as opposed to musicians presenting what they want you to hear. And I've really enjoyed some of the unintentional honesty that has come from that. Toby Jepson, who other people will know I'm a fan of from Little Angels and Wayward Sons, he's done similar things. He's a kitchen busker CDs where it is just him recording it really lo-fi. That is really lo-fi. And you know it when you're listening to it. And I mean, if you bought it off the shelf, not knowing what it was, you'd think, it's a bit crap, really. But understanding the logic of why it happened, it has a kind of charm that I don't think you could replicate in any other way. And this, to be fair, sounds fantastic as well. But it's clear what it is at the same time, even though it's been given this fancy treatment. And it's just something that I must admit I've really bought into. I like the Pineapple Thief anyway. I like all eras of them. They are another one of those bands that a lot of people kind of feel this about them.
Me as well. Yeah, that's where I come from.
Yeah, I am aware of that, to be fair. But yeah, I really like this. It's a really great cross section of stuff from right across their catalogue here. There's very little, if anything, that's repeated across 4 discs, and that says an awful lot about the standard of what's there. So yeah, this, although I've heard it all already, this will be getting heavy rotation for me, and something written about it quite soon.
Yeah, I think over the last, guys, we're approaching a year and a half now since COVID hit. We've seen a lot of kind of warts and all type of things, and that I think a lot of people have appreciated the honesty of it all. It's like we're all kind of like in the same, going through the same stuff here. So this kind of like idea of honest, here I am, stripped down, bare the soul type of musical release, I think it's been pretty cool, and I think a lot of people kind of appreciate that, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that the effort that some artists have gone to kind of put together some really cool content, and I think connect with their fans in a way that might never have happened before, has been, it was through necessity, because in many ways, what else are you going to do? I suppose some way you've got to keep your name out there, but and also they have to keep doing something, because we've all had to keep doing something during what's been a very odd time. But it has kind of allowed things to kind of grow a little bit more organically, and the mystique kind of went when the internet really hit for an awful lot of bands. But this has kind of, I think, made a connection in a different way that the internet seemed to have kind of ruined in many ways, and a lot of anticipation towards maybe some live streaming shows and various things like that. So lots of negatives to come from recent times, but some positives too. So yeah, I really like that style of release, and it's been a very interesting, journey to get to know artists in a way that we maybe didn't before.
Absolutely. All right, so my final release of this episode is speaking of Fernando Perdomo. He's back again as part of the new Empire Second Lifetime. So some folks might remember there was a band called Empire, which was started by a guy you might remember named Peter Banks, former guitar player of Yes, and Flash, who started this band called Empire back in, oh geez, I'm going to say late 70s, early 80s. I remember, I forget exactly when, but we've obviously lost Peter Banks. So we now have a new version of Empire, which is called New Empire, featuring Mark Murdoch on drums, who was formerly of that band, Fernando Perdomo on guitars, sitar, bass, keyboards, backing vocals, and lead vocalist Marisol Kaas. And that's basically them on the front there. I know it's kind of hard to see. This is a pretty interesting album, and this is on, what label are we on here? Forward Motion Records, I think it looks like. And let me just pull out the booklet here. So this is basically a tribute to the late Peter Banks. And we've got all sorts of folks who guest on here. We've got Sydney Fox, who was the original singer for Episode. Okay, or Empire, sorry, not Episode. We've got Dave Kersner, plays synth on one song. You've got Preston Murdoch, second guitar on a song. Julianne Spicer, lead and backing vocals on a couple tracks. Cami Akiyama on keyboards, couple tracks. Dennis Atlas, vocals on one song. And Rico Shonin plays organ on one track. So this is a mix of new originals by the band, as well as some covers of Empire classics, a couple Flash songs, and a Yes song. It's really good. The new original stuff is not, it's not overly progressive rock. It's kind of close. It's almost kind of like good power pop with some proggy touches here. Really solid stuff. And then, you've got some really cool covers. I mean, you have, what do we got here? Faraway Friend is a really neat tribute to Peter Banks, which is written by Fernando. Really cool guitar work on there. You have, what else? Looking Around, an old Yes classic from way back in the day, done really, really well. You've got Sky at Night and Foundation. Okay, those are old Peter Banks classics. Out of Our Hands. Folks who are familiar, especially with the Flash stuff, which I really like the band Flash. And if you've listened to the early Empire stuff, there have been some reissues that have come out in recent years where a lot of those Peter Banks bands that he played with after Flash have been made available. But it's really good. The vocals are really good. It's just, you listen to it and it just screams love for Peter Banks, and I think that was the reason for them doing this. And it's really fun. It's a really good album. You got 14 tracks, so there's a good amount of material on here. But between the covers and the original material, it's all a really good listen. Really good vocals, great instrumentation, poppy at times, more proggy at other times, but a lot of fun. So the New Empire, Second Lifetime, worth a listen. Very, very, very cool stuff. If you're a Peter Banks fan, you're definitely going to want to hear this, because I think the love for him really comes through, and it's a really nice tribute to him.
Good to hear, because that is one of those ideas that when it could have been a disaster, couldn't it? That's one of those ones where you kind of think that's dangerous territory to get involved in. So I haven't heard anything from it, although I do know quite a lot of the music that you've spoken about there. So even the fact that you're enthusiastic kind of makes me sigh a little bit of relief, because you would hate for that to have come out and for it to have stunk, wouldn't you? Really, that's it. But it is the sort of release that's dangerous territory.
Yeah.
So yeah, good to hear that it's.
Sometimes what I do with stuff like this, my first listen, because I tend to do this a lot. It's like you get these CDs in for review from people, and some people may want to go and do a lot of research on it first before they listen to it. And quite frankly, I got it. I put it in, and I started listening to it. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. And then I'm like, oh, wait a second. I know that song. Man, that's a Flash song. It's like, oh, wait a second. That's some pretty cool Peter Banksian stuff there from Fernando. And then I went and started looking at the song titles, and then I went and looked it up. I'm like, wow, this is a really cool tribute to Peter Banks. And that's exactly what I do. And then I'm like, I didn't, off the top of my head, the New Empire, I didn't even put two and two.
Well, I didn't either until you started talking there. Yeah.
No, I totally did not, right? Because it didn't come. It's not like this had all sorts of stickers on the front saying this is the second coming of Peter Banks's Empire and all that kind. I mean, I never. It didn't come that way, and I didn't even put the two together. So, and then once I started doing that, then I'm like, oh, now I see where they were going with this. job well done. Kind of like this, right? So it's almost like these two kind of go together because both are a really cool, loving tribute to two pretty notable, musicians, one who's still with us, one who's not. So yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good.
It's interesting because we were talking about how eclectic Fernando Perdomo can be, and those two releases, by their very nature, kind of show you how far apart style-wise he can cover, and you like them both, so he's obviously done a good job on them both. But that doesn't surprise me because even his own stuff, I mean, some of it is, proper old-fashioned symphonic rock, prog rock. But there's a lot of stuff that's got very Beatles influences and various things like that, and you never think, oh well, he's chasing an idea or a sound. It just sounds very natural. He's just got a real knack for that sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he regularly posts little videos, little snippets of him doing stuff in his home studio. And he's also the type of guy, he's a really good guitar player, but he loves just pulling out his bass and doing the kind of these interpretations of classics on his bass. And he's just sitting there and getting into it. And I'm like, you gotta love that, right? It's just, he just loves making music, and for him, it's just not all about, going out and making tons of money at it and getting all the acclaim. He's just I just love doing this. I live to do this. And that's, to me, that's pretty endearing. That is just someone who is just, they're a fan themselves, and he happens to be gifted at what he does. And he just loves going out there and either making his own music or, paying tribute to some of the artists that he loves, and nothing wrong with that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. So there you have it, everybody. 8 new releases that you should definitely check out. And there's a lot more than this, but that's what we decided to squeeze into this episode. So we'll be, Stephen and I would love to do this at least once a month because there's so much new stuff that comes out, and it's kind of cool to knock off a bunch of really good ones in one episode. But stay tuned because we are coming right back at you. As requested by many of you, Stephen is going to give you his ranking of the Magenta albums, a great UK prog rock band. I'm not overly familiar with them, but I didn't want that to stop us. So I'm going to kind of be sitting here listening and smiling while Stephen gives you his rundown on their catalog. So that's coming up right after this. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org, where we've got 20 years worth of, what are we up to now? 23,000 reviews?
Nearly 23 now.
Yeah, it's crazy. 20th year. So you can check out, and Stephen and I believe it's either Stephen, myself, John Newdorf, or Mike Popke, I think, all have in the thousands of reviews. I know we're not quite approaching Martin Popoff territory. But, I think we're pretty respectable when it comes to
not far away.
So go check us out on the website. Stephen's been with us for over a decade, and a lot of really good reviews on the channel, and a lot of good ones lately. So don't miss any of those. If you don't go to Sea of Tranquility, the website, you should. Great reference point for 20 years worth of album CD reviews, and a good resource to use. And here we just kind of talk about them casually. On the website, we get down to the nitty gritty of every freaking song and all that kind of stuff. So if you're into that sort of thing, right? So check us out there. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube
all the damn time.
That's right. Right from the horse's mouth there. Yeah, of course. So like I said, stay tuned for Magenta. For Stephen, Reid, I am Pete Pardo. See you shortly. Take care.